Hey there, everybody. Looks like I am live. I'm working on posting the live stream link to a couple of places really fast so that way it can get out there. If you are just joining me, I would appreciate if you would share this feed with other places. That would really help me out and help get the word out that I am live. I would appreciate that very, very much. So yeah, if you could share this link with people, like on your Facebook page, Facebook group, something like that you belong to, that would really help. I would appreciate that. Let's see, I'm just posting this right now in my Discord server, just so that way the people there can get some notification of that. But anyway, hey, how's it going, Igor? Nice to hear from somebody from Brazil. I hope everybody out there is safe in the world. I just posted the link to the actual feed. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that, I would really, really appreciate that. How is the audio? I have a new microphone here that I picked up off of Amazon. I'm hoping, and actually the audio quality is better than the past. I can adjust the gain. So if I'm too loud or too quiet or something like that, let me know. Just kind of guessing. I think this is a pretty good setting based off of what I've recorded previously to test this all out. Cool. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. How's it going, Tim and Paul? Where is everybody from here? And what time zone are you in? Canary Islands. Awesome. Good audio. Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. How's it going, Alex? Excellent. Good to know that you're from Discord and your name there, as well as if you're patrons and stuff, that helps too. Hey, Alex, Wisconsin, California, Brazil. Awesome. Lots and lots of places. Again, as people are rolling in, I would really appreciate it if you wouldn't mind sharing the link to this feed, like in your Facebook pages that you belong to, things like that, because it really helps spread the word that I'm live. You know, not everybody publicly subscribes to my channel, so they don't get notifications that I'm live. And I don't really post on social media. I just don't use that anymore at all, to be honest, other than YouTube. And I actually don't even watch YouTube anymore. I just post on it. So cool. Yeah, lots of people. Ryan, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you made the mental one. You've been asking for a mental live for forever by now, it seems, at least. So glad you made it. And lots of places. Awesome. People from the UK, 11 p.m. I appreciate the dedication tuning in. But yeah, so in this live feed here, yeah, I can tell. In this live feed here, we're going to focus on the mental aspects of archery. So we can talk about the mental game, talk about visualization, and talk about anything you want to talk about in regards to the mental stuff. We'll try to keep it narrowed to that. And feel free to post questions and things like that, because I can answer them. It's always better for me to just answer questions that you have, because it, you know, there's a million things about the mental aspects of archery. And then I can explain my experience and things like that as much as I can. And if I miss your question, don't be offended. I'm just trying my best to answer questions, because they come in really, really quick. And it's hard to keep up with, to be honest. And also, you know, if we get a flood of questions or something like that, you know, don't be afraid to throw up that super chat. That really just kind of pops it up there, and I can't miss it, and I won't miss it for sure. So, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, fire away whenever you want. So, Dwan XT, yes, this video will be available as a delayed feed. Immediately when I exit this, it will be available forever on my channel. I won't remove it ever. So it'll be available and up and good to go there. And you can always reference this. So if you do need to take off at any point, you can, but you'll miss your opportunity to ask some questions. So it makes it a little more better to be here live, obviously. And if you share it, obviously that helps a whole lot. It helps me a whole lot. So we'll just start right off the bat. Ryan's throwing questions out right away, so we'll just go right with him. His question is, did I focus on mental development when I first started competing prior to the OTC, or was I more indirectly focused as a result or another factor like competitiveness, the love of the sport, or goals? So honestly, no. no real official like prep mentally at all before I went out to the Olympic Training Center, other than my dad. So I grew up playing baseball and archery. I started baseball and archery at roughly the same time, and really got heavily involved in baseball and archery at the same time. It just kind of was, I don't know why, it just worked hand in hand. The hand-eye coordination development in archery really helped my baseball. And, his attitude was always like, you're just going to get out there and you're going to crush it, just supreme confidence type attitude that I really went with. And, I really had no fear, because I really just approached it with this: I'm just going to crush it. I'm going to get up there. I'm going to shoot those arrows. I'm going to shoot better than my opponent. And I'm just going to make it happen. Those arrows are going to drop right in the middle. And I had absolutely no fear and no issue at all. But, I was super young. I moved out to the training center when I just turned 18, a couple months after that. So I wouldn't say that I had really any plan, any visualization, any sort of mantra, any sort of anything. It was just nothing. So other than just trying to be confident as much as possible. So let's see. Igor's got a question. You always practice alone? I do now, yes. And I have since 2013, the beginning of 2013, all alone on my own. How do I generate some kind of stress for the competitions? So stress, I've talked about in the Training for Archery book that my wife and Heather and I wrote. And, the type of stress that I would induce into practice to kind of, prepare me for competitions was playing games. That could be either a game, like a gold game, could be aiming on gold game, aiming off gold game. It could be limitations on time frames of shooting. So meaning, like, I would say, okay, at 8 a.m., I'm going to get out there, and at 8 a.m. practice starts, just like a normal competition. So I'm trying to constrain my practice and saying, okay, I'm going to practice 2 ends, and then I'm going to score just like we do in a normal competition. So I put constraints on it that add stress. The time constraints, I would do a drill where I'd shoot 12 arrows in 4 minutes. It was absolutely brutal, but it made me amazingly strong, especially shooting that, Olympic style recurve at 70 meters, 12 arrows in 4 minutes is really rough. It's brutal. But it really shows you kind of where you're lacking in your mental program and your mental process of, like, if you have a hitch in the process anywhere, you really, really notice it, because you have no options. You can't let down. You can't start over. You can't do anything. You just got to plow through. It really helps for team rounds, really helps for elimination rounds where it's one-on-one elimination rounds, things like that. So there's that. And, I didn't have it, but I had some, when I trained at the Olympic Training Center, after I made the Rio Games, I shot with them and the team, and the coaches had not necessarily written an algorithm, but it was kind of like a random number generator, basically. And you could do that yourself as well. I don't know how you would have to set it up, but essentially, if I'm generating a random number for 3 arrow ends, and I'm trying to beat my opponent, the random number generator, I would hit the button of, okay, I'm going to generate number. Okay, the opponent shot a 28. I have to shoot a 28 to tie, a 29 to win. That adds stress to the situation. And so I would say, at my level, I would say, okay, my random number generator is going to be from 26 to 30, and it's going to be, the mean will be at 28 and a half, something like that. So, you can adjust those numbers up and down to basically create pressure against yourself and have a virtual opponent. You can also film yourself. Recently, we started shooting on camera, and she, was like, hey, I got distracted, and I wasn't maintaining my process, and I wasn't maintaining all these things, and it was distracting, and it kind of pulled me out of my comfort zone. And that's part of practice, and part of training. And also, you could also do things like dealing with jet lag, dealing with soreness, things like that. I genuinely used my physical training, my strength training, lifting weights, and the soreness the few days afterwards as training for archery and dealing with jet lag, because you never feel good flying halfway across the world. So if I can shoot well with muscle fatigue and soreness, then I should be good. So those are a couple options, a couple things that you can do. So now that there's a little bit more people in here, again, I'm going to iterate, if you don't mind, please share this feed. I have a link here. I will put that in the chat window here, or there's probably a share button somewhere around here. I would really appreciate it if you would share the feed out there. It really helps get this out there that I am live. A lot of people don't publicly subscribe to my channel. So I guess if you're not subscribed, subscribe if you wouldn't mind. It just helps get the word out there, because when I go live, you'll get a notification when I am live, and those people that aren't subscribed don't get the notifications. So if you post it in a Facebook group you belong in, like the Barebow Facebook or Recurve Archery Facebook, online message boards, it really, really helps get people to this channel so they can ask questions as well. And it really helps expand the channel. And I appreciate everybody that shares these videos very, very much. So again, if I miss your questions, please just comment them again, throw a super chat up. It'll pop it up and I can't miss it, but I'm going to do my best to answer as many questions as possible, over the next, I don't know, probably a couple hours, because I don't have anything to do right now. My wife is out of town, and I'm trying to fill my time as wisely as possible. So let's see. Paul has a question. Do I have or recommend a routine when competing and the mental side just left the building? Or do I reset feet, move anything to routine to reset? Oh, I see. So do I have so Paul, I'm going to see if I can rephrase your question and see if it makes the same sense to you. So I'm going to assume you're asking me if I have some sort of reset, some sort of thing that kind of restarts my thought loop, my shot cycle, my whatever it is. So if that's the question, I'm going to wait for you to comment, but I'm going to get into the answering that anyway, because it is a good question. Yes, I did have one, and there's many different ones that I've tried over the years. In the beginning, having a cue of starting the shot over, like a start point. That could be something as simple as scrunching your toes in your shoes after you've loaded your arrow right before you set your hook and grip. It could be pressing on your tab, pressing your fingers together. Okay, good. I'm glad I got the question. Or for me, if you've seen some of the videos of me shooting at 70 meters, I think I did it during the Meta DX review, where I was talking about, because I let down the shot, and even though I never shot an arrow, I looked through my spotting scope, and then I stood back up and I said, hey, this is actually a bit of a mental reset for me. It's a habit. And I'm not even actually looking at the arrows at all. I'm not looking at the result. I'm not looking at my opponent's result or any of that stuff. I'm just that motion of looking down, standing back up, taking that breath, and starting back over really is just my reset program for the actual program itself. So that is what I would do. And, I recommend that you can definitely have something like that. You can have some sort of a reset, and it is a good thing to have, because sometimes, you get stressed, you get distracted. A bird flies in front of your target, or the bee, flies at you and almost stings you. I don't know, whatever. You can basically just reset, start over, and go back to zero. Go back to square one. I think it's definitely important to have some sort of a mental reset or some sort of program that will allow you to do that. But if anything, first you must be aware. You must be aware that your thought has drifted. You must be aware that you need that reset. Hang on, the cat's hanging out behind the monitor. Can't have that happening. So that is what I would say. It is important, but again, you have to have the ability to recognize when you need to reset, when your thoughts are distracting. So really trying to work on mindfulness is important for sure. All right, let's see. Like I said, I'm trying to keep up. There's a lot of, and these are detailed questions and detailed answers. This is a very complex subject. It's not necessarily difficult to answer, but it's just very complex. So again, don't be offended if I miss your question. I'll do my best. Let's see here. Marco has a question. This is a good one. How do you judge your own mental state and readiness for competition? The balance between self-doubt and overconfidence. Thanks, Paul, for the super chat. I appreciate it. And, I'm glad I could answer your question. I hope I answered it well for you. So Marco's question is, how do I judge my own mental state and readiness and the balance between self-doubt and overconfidence? Well, what you really, really need to do is you need to be honest. I think that an honest archer makes a good archer. I've had Coach Lee has told me that many, many times over the past as well. I didn't necessarily understand it in the beginning, but being mentally capable to recognize when it is your fault or when your performance was lackluster due to your lack of preparation or something along those lines. The ability to recognize when it is your fault or when you are overconfident or self-doubting. So the only time that you could ever be overconfident, in my opinion, when it would be a negative thing, would be to be overly positive and expect a result when you didn't put in your time and didn't do your due diligence and didn't really make sure that you approached it fully and completely. I would never say that there's a negative way to be overconfident because, you look at the top guys and they just exude confidence. And that's just part of the actual mental game is you gotta be confident, so that's part of it. But as far as just judging my own mental state, more often I would be evaluating the shot process of how did the shot go? How did the execution phase go? When I faltered during a competition, what happened? Was it my fault? Was it somebody else's fault? Like, what was it? Was it the wind? And if it was the wind, then was it because I didn't judge the wind? Was I unaware that the wind had changed? And do I need to adjust my mental program, my shot cycle to, adjust for the wind sooner, later, differently? So it's a very difficult question to answer directly, but, you got to be able to kind of be honest, and you have to be able to manage and change on a turn of a dime as soon as you possibly can or whenever you can, because you never know. It's just going to be a difficult thing to adjust for. You just got to be light on your feet and be able to make those adjustments and be able to balance between self-doubt and overconfidence. But, if you're doubting yourself, you got to put in more work into your self-image and a bit more visualization. Things like that can really, really help. Hey, the push. How's it going, everybody over there? I'm glad you guys tuned in. If anybody hasn't seen their stuff, I highly would recommend it. They do a great job with cinematography, and their quiver is incredible. I love shooting with the push, hip quiver. I can put anything in there and not need a release pouch or anything like that. It's awesome to have. So let's see here. We'll try to answer some more questions. Books and coffees. The question's two parts, and it's about tournaments and performance. How do I approach a important tournament mentally, the official practice day and during the tournament itself? And the second part would be, what would I do if my performance took a dip before a very important tournament, and no matter what I did, it didn't go up? Like my average was 30 points less than usual. All right, so let's see. Honestly, the way I would approach all of that is do not change your approach to anything ever. Every arrow is the same arrow that you always shoot. Practice is the same. Competition is the same. It's all the same. It's never changing. Never, ever, ever does it change. It's always the same arrow. It's you and the bow, and you shoot the bow shoots the arrow. It's it. That's it. The competitor is irrelevant. We're not in a contact sport. So what that competitor is doing does not affect me. It can based on their result if I allow it to. But if I do my job, there is no difference between practice or competition or anything. So in order to approach the tournament efficiently, you have to really try to approach every arrow all the time the same. The only exception that I have for that, and the only tip that I would say that you should not do, or a tip that I would adjust, is trying to really turn the last end of practice before official scoring starts into scoring. So like say if there was 3 ends of practice, which is fairly common for outdoor competitions, I would shoot 12 arrows the first 2 ends of, practice, because you can shoot unlimited arrows. I'd shoot 12 arrows the first 2 ends, and then the last end I would only shoot 6 arrows and treat it exactly like the scoring round and try to mentally just get in the zone of the competition, because sometimes the first end of scoring can be a bit nerve-wracking, especially the ranking round at the Olympic Games or Vegas or something like that. Really just nail down that first scoring end, but it be actually the last end of practice. Now, as far as the actual dip of performance before a competition, part of that is you really need to make sure that you are maintaining and monitoring your training cycles and the output that you're getting of the scores, and see how long of a delay your scores go up and down based on how many arrows you're shooting. So at a high level for me, I would notice that for, like, say if I had a high load day or week, there would be a 5 to 7 day delay after those 7 days of where all of a sudden my scores would peak. I'd shoot extremely well. And then about the 12 to 15 day period after that heavy load, my scores would dip down just a little bit. And that was just due to the training cycles and loads that I was running in. And I knew that because I monitored my scores, my body feeling, my training loads and things like that. And then I could actually produce a peak at a given time. So as far as if it all went downhill, go back to square one. If you just can't put your thumb on it, can't figure it out, you go back to square one, you start over, you run your mental program, you run your shot sequence, you just run through everything, and you just stick to your guns and you stick to what you know. And you got to have faith that it's going to come back. Worst comes to worst, if the scores just aren't coming back, evaluate, make sure your string's not failing, your center serving's not breaking, your knocks aren't cracked, veins aren't falling off, things like that. Maybe just do a little bit of tuning, take your mind off of it and say, the tune was off a little bit. And look, lo and behold, my scores are going back up. And you can kind of like fake it till you make it, get it back up to where it should be. That would kind of be what I would suggest. So let's see here. We've got a question. Gary's got a question. Do I run Troy Bassam's pre and post shot routine? And if so, do I limit the pre-shot to key parts of my technique or my full shot cycle? So yes, I worked actually personally with Lanny and Troy Bassam a few times. And Lanny's the father, Troy's the son. And I did. I don't really anymore. I haven't really gotten back into that habit. I'm just having too much fun shooting Barebow, to be honest. But as far as the limit of the pre-shot to key parts of my technique, yes, I did. I only limited it to after transfer to the expansion phase of thinking and feeling about the perfect follow-through finish position. Not even thinking about the release, but thinking about the shot breaking and just immediately hitting the best feeling finish position I can possibly have. But then I took it above and beyond their recommendations, which I highly recommend everybody to do, is visualizing and feeling what it feels like watching that arrow drop in the middle of the target and shooting a 10. So taking it to the next level of not just feeling a good shot, but also visualizing the impact and truly trying to approach it as if it had actually happened. And then the action phase of actually shooting the arrow becomes more easy and automatic. And it's just like, all I have to do is hit my marks and the arrow goes in the middle. I don't even have to really fight for it. It's going to happen because it's already done. That would be the way I would approach it, and only focus on the action phase. Now the caveat to that is if you are a brand new archer and you're new or you're working on form and technique, then yes, absolutely. Anytime I was making a form change, I would add that into my mental program of the pre and post routine. So say if I was anchoring in a different place or something, I would picture myself anchoring in a different place, feeling that anchor being in a different place. And so instead of it just happening once every time I would shoot an arrow, that change would be happening 3 times in my head. And I made physical, technical changes 3 times faster, in my opinion. And it actually really, really worked well. Hey, James, I'm glad you came in. Thanks for tuning in here. And let's see, we got a question from the push. All right. Can I elaborate more on working on my self-image? And can I discuss some approaches and tools you can use? It looks like you're about to start a regimented directive affirmation process to help with this. Can I talk about those and other tools? Yes. So as far as working on your self-image, this is it's something that takes a lot of time, and something that you need to really kind of dial in, and you have to almost lie to yourself, but be okay with that and know that it is happening, and know what your game plan is. So the game plan would be, you want your self-image to get better. You want your ability to believe in yourself, both literally in the moment and externally in your self or subconscious brain, meaning externally, because it's really actually out of your control. So actually, before I get too further into this, I want to share a story about the self-image and what it means and what it can do for you. So back in 2009 or 10, I think 2009, the end of 2009, the US Open was happening after our nationals. I had finally started shooting well, and I was shooting really well at the US Open. And I think I got to like the quarterfinals or something like that. The furthest I've ever gotten at that point. And I actually started shooting against Vic Wonderly. And, Vic Wonderly is an Olympic silver medalist individually, and, a good archer. At that time, he was the top few archers in the States, probably second or something like that, maybe third. And all of a sudden, we were shooting 12 arrow ends at that point. And it was straight score. It wasn't set system. And going into the last end of 3 arrows, I was up 9 points, something like that, with 3 arrows left. So basically it was all over but the crying at that point. It should have been, at least. And, everybody's goal, and it happens, is to get into the zone within the sport. So the zone being, for me, what the zone is when I don't remember what happened. And I get to the point of where it's just automated, and it just happens. I may be kind of like perceiving what's happening, but I'm not necessarily controlling what's happening. But sometimes I will actually black out when I'm really in the zone in a very high pressure situation. I will remember drawing the bow back. I will remember anchoring and transferring. And then I won't remember much after that until, the arrow's in the target. And so I got to that point. I was in the zone. I drew back. I was up 8-9 points. I think I maybe had 2 arrows left, or maybe it was the first arrow at the end. And I remember pulling the bow back and anchoring. And then I remember, oh shit, and I missed. So my subconscious, because I was shooting so well, I was on pace to shoot 115 out of 120. And at that point, my personal best maybe was a 109, something like that. So I was just shooting lights out, something that I was not normally capable of, and, capable of, but not normally would happen. And, I talked to Lanny and Troy about it, and I said specifically, like, what happened there? I don't understand what happened. I got in the zone, and then all of a sudden I missed. I shot through my clicker or whatever it was. And they said, all right, well, honestly, it's because your self-image circle was the smallest of your 3 circles within the mental management system. So you got your conscious, your subconscious, and your self-image. And they were like, you're not comfortable with shooting those high scores. So you have to build your self-image up in order for that to never happen again. So it was actually very crazy that it happened. And so the way that you can really do that is visualizing, not just visualizing the scores that you're shooting, but visualizing success, feeling the success, but taking that visualization to a sickening degree of detail. Smelling the grass, seeing each individual blade of grass, feeling the wind, feeling the humidity, feeling the sun, feeling the heat, anticipating difficult situations where the wind is coming up, or it's pouring rain, or you're down in score, or whatever. But visualizing and feeling and overcoming those things are all ways to increase your self-image in the actual 3 windows of the what is it called, the mental management system. So doing stuff like that, you can really benefit from it, but it's just, you have to you can do affirmations. I like doing those. And that's what I have. I am on everything is I am, period. It is not I want to be. Stop telling people and if you can try to believe it as much as humanly possible, it then will happen. If you really just keep pushing forward, push forward, your self-image will grow and grow and grow because you are becoming what you are saying you are. So I am Olympic silver medalist or whatever you want to be. I don't want to be an Olympic silver medalist, but that's what it became. So it could be like, I am the 2022 U.S. Archery outdoor national champion, or whatever it is. And writing those affirmations and statements are really, really valuable and important. But it's not just how you want to see yourself, but it's also what you need to do to be there. So I am whatever you are, whatever you want to be, and then how you got there. So I am national champion because I effectively applied my mental program and process every single shot of the tournament, and I made sure and deliberately with control and conviction executed my shot process exactly how I wanted to. That type of affirmation of a sickening degree in detail of how to do what you want to do. That's the type of affirmations that really can help. You can write them on your mirror in your bathroom, write them on a sticky note on the door. Every time you walk by it, read it, stop, read it, and visualize for a moment, and then move forward. It can really help. All right, so deliver my shark. What were some areas of the mental game I focused on after a break or hiatus? Back to square one, and I think that if you really just hit your routine as much as possible, that can really, really help. Trying to make it a bit more simple can help too. And try to ingrain a bit more of the how and not just the end result. There was a couple questions ago about how much of the pre-routine do I integrate. And if I was just getting back into it, pre and post, I would integrate more of the shot cycle as a whole and not just the execution phase into my visualization of the pre and post shot routine. That could help a whole lot. That's where I would suggest starting. John Pierre has a question. Is the mental game linked to your physical game? Yes and no. Yes, it is linked to the physical game because if you do your job in the physical side, whether that be technique or physical training and preparation, you should be in a better place mentally because you should feel that you have an advantage over your opponents. So you should feel that you have an edge, especially if you're doing your job and doing it as much as you possibly can. So that's kind of what I would say. So yes, I would say the physical game is tied to the mental game, and then physically within the form stuff. If you're doing your form right, you're focusing on your shot routine, which is form related and physically related, then you have a default that you can go back into, and it is something that is repetitive. And so the whole point of a mental game and a mental process is to have consistency. So shot to shot to shot, you got to be the same. If you're going to do the same thing, you can expect consistent results. But because your brain controls a lot of what you're doing, in fact, everything, you have to also think the same thing, shot and shot and shot and shot. And then you'll have the same results. If you had physical and mental sides both working together, doing the same thing over and over and over again, you should have repeated results. And so you should have more accuracy. That's kind of the whole point of the mental game or the mental process of shooting. Let's see, Ryan, got another question here. I know you're itching to fire these off. I appreciate you waiting. And then I've got there's a bunch back here. So I'll approach this one and then grab some more. Ryan's got a question of, since the mental development was introduced to me at the training center, was it slow and steady steps, or was there ever any particular exchanges with a coach, competitor, teammate that made it click? Honestly, nothing clicked in the mental stuff until really working with it for 2 years. It took a long time to get comfortable with it and get used to it. I talked to Brady right away when I got there because I saw a book just floating around with mental management and stuff. So I was asking him about it. Actually, it was on CD because he would play it in his truck sometimes when he was driving. So I started integrating the pre-shot routine, but not the post-shot routine. And part of the reason why I had that zone shot where I missed the target with Vic is because I didn't do the post-shot routine. And the post-shot routine is oftentimes where you really develop your self-image. So this is another way that the push could use this, is that you can really try to run that post-shot routine, because if you make a bad shot in the action phase of the actual shot, running that phase again and compensating for that falter in the action phase, and then visualizing a successful shot with more strength or whatever your weakness was, can help then develop that self-image more as well. So as far as did it click? No, it took a long time. And when it did click, it was relatively earth moving for me as an archer, for sure. And it just happened one day. And, that stuck with me for a very long time until the realization of what was happening kind of set in, and then I couldn't get out of my own head. And ultimately that kind of held me back for the rest of my career a little bit. And what I mean by that is, once I realized, I could make a living and really tried to start relying on that and all sorts of stuff, it became too stressful and too much for me to deal with, going to World Cup events and things like that, like especially indoor World Cups. If I took second place, I was plus or minus $500 in expenses for the trip. And I was trying to put food on the table. So that kind of pressure just kind of was, I was unable to deal with it for certain events, especially if it was expensive. But other events where it really meant nothing, I shot really well. So that kind of, once that set in, it kind of just stuck. I learned to manage that a little bit more at the end. And so I was a lot more comfortable with it and happy with where I was headed. And, a lot of the things are dealing with the action phase of what I was doing at full draw. And I found switching to the more the bow hand side focus, it just kind of allowed the right side to do what it needed to do. And I didn't really have to focus on it so much. And that's why in a lot of the videos on this channel, I really try to profess pushing towards the target. It makes a gigantic difference. So let's see. We got a question from James. By the way, James, thanks for your help. James, everybody, is the one who helped work on the majority of all the apparel that I have. And I genuinely appreciate his help and support as well. So thank you. Big thanks to James. And if you're interested in any of the apparel, you can check out links in the description for the stuff that I do have available to help support the channel. So let's see, you've got a couple of questions here. How did I manage my mind or quiet it, the aiming release phase, or did I just concentrate on the process and let it take place? And you asked it in a little bit different way of how did I get into the zone? And like the moment just before release, is it faith in the process of the physical and mental hard work? Yes, it is. Absolutely. It is a part of the zone. You want to do everything you possibly can to push yourself towards the zone. As an archer or as an individual who has gotten there, I can't just turn it on. I can't just flip a switch to make it happen. I can get myself and prepare myself as much as possible to get as close to the zone as I possibly can, and then just hope it happens. But as far as, flipping the switch, it just doesn't happen. You got to do everything you possibly can to get as close as you can to the zone. Sorry, my wife's texting me. I want to make sure. I stay in touch with her. But as far as how did I get into the zone? Again, you can't just flip the switch, but you can push yourself towards it. And the way that you can do it is always making sure your routine is the same and really trying to drill that home and prepare yourself as much mentally for that event you're heading into. So the deep visualization of the grass, the wind, the challenges, and everything, the more prepared you can be. So, and like I said, trying to even incorporate overcoming adversity, overcoming potential problems, and visualize the problem coming up and then visualize the successful overcoming of that will allow you to be a lot more confident and comfortable with when those happen. And so you're always close to that zone, and it can happen a lot more. Now, as far as getting into it more towards the later parts of my career, I really felt mentally and physically that there were two distinct parts of every shot. Yes, there's a million steps, but there's the approach phase, the phase of where you're getting ready to shoot, and then there's the execution phase. So the loading phase or the drawing the bow back, getting back to full draw, getting into transfer, how you get to there, and what you're focusing on is always the same, and that is the prep phase, that is the loading phase. But then the execution phase is what happens to the point of where when you take that safety off and you're like, all right, it's go time, and I'm fully committed to what I'm doing, and I'm going to finish. Having the finish or the separation of those two phases and being able to mentally be comfortable with that really allowed the shot to happen so much easier, because yes, the wind is ripping and the rain is pouring, or there's 10 seconds left on the clock, whatever it is, you get back to full draw, you forget about all that, and then all you're worried about is this. And when you just give it that push, that just happens. It happens if you've really done your due diligence and put in your time and have shot countless arrows and have run that program countless times, because the beauty about running a program with a preload and a reload within the shot cycle is every arrow you actually shoot, you actually have 3 impressions on your subconscious and your self-image, and you can get better faster, and you'll get more confident faster, and you'll be comfortable faster. And hopefully you'll be able to get in the zone more consistently because you have built up this huge, working mechanism that you can just rely on when it's stress, when there's a pressure situation, and you really just need to fall back on everything you've done. That can really, really help. So I hope that answers that question. And thank you again for all the help on the shirts. So again, now that we've gotten a little bit further into this, I genuinely appreciate everybody tuning in. If you wouldn't mind sharing the feed, that really helps, especially because I plan on being live for at least another hour, give or take. As long as there's still people here and questions being answered, we'll stick around. Have a good time. So Morena has a question from Brazil. Her question is, when I am very tired physically and need to train, do I insist or do I respect the limits of my body? Or how can you train your mind with the body exhausted? Well, that is it's not a difficult question to answer just because there's a little bit of layers there, but tired physically is different than in pain physically, especially when it comes to shooting. Being tired, just lethargic and just kind of out of it, that's part of it. That's part of practice, part of training, especially a couple days after a very heavy day of training or a very stressful day of training. So, that's one thing. When your body is in genuine pain and your shoulder's actually in pain, or your ribs are really killing you, or your neck's out, something, then there is times when you need to respect the limits, and you need to be honest with yourself, and you have to say and make the decision of, is it actually me? Am I overtraining and I'm about to hurt myself? Or is it that I just don't want to be here and I've really pushed myself really hard this last week, but I still have to shoot because it's my plan and it's good for me. You have to be able to recognize the difference between the two. It can be difficult, and it's a little tough, but I believe that pushing yourself is important. Most people, in my experience, at a club, especially between the club level and the national level, you'll have a lot of people who have lofty goals or wants and desires, which is a great thing to have, by the way. There's nothing wrong with having lofty goals. But being honest with yourself and your efforts is difficult to those people. They have these wants and desires and these goals. But I don't see it often. I don't see the output often being what is needed to push them to the next level. So sometimes they'll say, I'm tired. I feel like I'm overtraining. I need to just take the day off. There's a difference between tired and there's a difference between genuine physical pain about to happen. And unfortunately, the only real time you can actually tell that is when you get to the, get to that point. But you've got to do your job of rehab, prehab, recovery, physically, mentally. There's a lot that you need to make sure you're doing. So you can't just keep pushing. You also have to, really do your time, and recovery is as important to training as training is. So yes, there is times to relax, but there is also times to push forward. And when you push forward through that physical tiredness, and you can have some sort of level of success, whether that be a good score, a good end, a great feeling shot, live in that moment and really try to focus on that. Because again, once you start traveling, if you're ever going to get into that, or we can ever travel again, you can use that feeling of fatigue as a training game to push through and learn how to deal with that. That's important. So let's see. Jim's got a question. Can I explain a bit on the ABC me and Matt were talking about on the Kaminski Files on the Push podcast? So Matt is the Push Archery, and I did a podcast recently with him on there. And so Jim looked for the video and couldn't find it. I don't know which video it is exactly, but let's see. What do I have here that I can illustrate this with? It's just what I've got, some JB Weld sitting here. So let's imagine that this is the A position, this is the B position, this is the C position. And so this is definitely part of a mental focus thing. So this does apply. So A would be rest, set position. B is full draw. I've transferred and I'm ready to start executing. C is the shot has ended, where finish ends. So C is not where the clicker clicks and you let go, or you cut it loose, or your release breaks or whatever. But when you cut it loose and you have finished the shot and there is no more ability to move, you finished. Some people, the finger coming to their shoulder, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It could be anything. The difference between ABC and the phase is A to B is the drawing phase, that's loading the shot, and B to C is the execution phase. Now, when you get to B, release is going to happen between B and C, somewhere in here. So if B is here or here, it's not important and it doesn't really matter. What's really important is once you come to full draw and you have transferred, you want to then focus on the finished position, and you must push towards the finished position. If your focus is on the finishing the shot instead of letting go, getting that clicker to click or whatever, your stress would be much less for this phase here if your main focus is here. If I'm focused here, I want to get to B. And if I come to transfer and I'm not pushing to finish, my JB Weld here will fall in any direction. If I have no direction, then I'm pushing from B. But if I get to B, get to transfer, and I want to hit C and finish, and I'm just giving that little bit of help, it is going to fall towards that direction. As long as I'm pushing towards this finished position and I'm trying to focus on here, then release and release and the start of follow through will just happen automatically. So hopefully that kind of covers that little bit of difference there. Let's see here. My wife texted me. I just need to reply to her. So hopefully that answers the ABC. So like I said, there's a lot more questions starting to come in. And again, these are detailed questions and detailed answers. So if I miss them, just throw up another comment or question or a super chat. I'll be able to keep up with them a lot easier that way. Don't be offended and comment again, and I'll try to pick up as many questions as possible. Profound Cupcakes has a question about what is target panic. They've never done competition before. I'm fairly new, but what is target panic? Target panic is the anticipation of the shot. So that's rather the anticipation of the clicker clicking, you're releasing, squeezing the trigger, whatever it is, you're anticipating that happening. And so what happens is you're basically in a, it can be so severe that target panic is really preventing you from shooting how you normally shoot. So if you don't have it, you can aim in the middle, relax, aim, pull, clicker clicks, and you let the shot break. Now, a clicker really helps prevent target panic to some extent. But if you don't have a clicker and you're aiming and you're going to try to get that sight pin in the very middle of the target before you cut it loose, sometimes it can be manifested in a way where your pin just sits low and I can't physically push it up. If I push it up, I just cut it loose. And I have this irrational like fear of the shot breaking, and just if I have no intention of shooting the shot, I can aim in the middle all day long. But as soon as I say, okay, I'm going to shoot this one, it's like, and you just can't get it to go. So it's an interesting thing to have to deal with. But you know, a super good resource that I saw after I figured out the grip sear on my own. It's on the Pushes training programs basically that are out there. Why am I blanking on the name here? I'm gonna be made fun of here. But oh my God, why is my brain not working? I'm gonna look for this person. The actual thing is a how-to and how to avoid the actual and deal with target panic. So if anybody out there knows the person, it's man, my brain is just not working today. Yeah, Joel Turner, Joel Turner and Shot IQ has a really good program, and I saw the video, his series after getting through my target panic. Which just really helps solidify it. And what he said is it's essentially your subconscious anticipating a shot recoil. And because you can control it by when you release, you control when that shot recoil is happening. It would be like, say if you were diabetic and you had to take your blood glucose level, because you have this little plunger that automatically stabs your finger. It's easy to put the thing up to your finger and just hit the button, because hitting the button makes it happen. No big deal. But if you had to actually hold that needle and stab yourself, it's going to be like, I don't really want to do it. And then you close your eyes and just jab yourself, right? And that's kind of what target panic is sort of like, because it's like, if I had the clicker or the shot just automatically happened, it would just break and be normal. But if it was like that's kind of what target panic is. Thanks, Jim, for digging me out of a hole there. Can't believe I forgot Joel's name. Terrible. Let's see here. So again, please throw your comments up. That would be great. Let's see. Ryan's got another one. Seems like not everyone's focus as much as on mental development. Does this apply to world-class archers, or do all world-class archers all have a world-class mental game necessary for that elite level? Difficult to say. There are anomalies. There are new shooters. I would argue that a lot of young shooters that shoot really well for a year or two and then all of a sudden don't shoot well for several years. There are many out there. I was one of those. Is that there was not a strong enough foundation within that mental process and mental program. And then once the conscious brain became strong enough and aware enough as to the level of pressure or what is riding on it, whether it be a check or fame or whatever, because it could be local fame or whatever, that takes over, and then they falter, and then they have to start working on their mental program and mental process, mental game, and then they get better. So I would say most of them have great programs and mental fortitude. Some do not. but sometimes that rears itself, especially in young archers. So Ben Lou's got a question here. Let's see. He was wondering what balance of hardcore training, example, wind, rain, on cushions, loudspeakers versus training in perfect conditions. So this is a loaded question, and I think, in my personal opinion, once you know what to do when the wind comes up, stop shooting in the wind. Like, once you know how to adjust for it, don't ever shoot in the wind again. Once you know how to deal with the rain, don't ever shoot in the rain again. As far as wobble cushions, there are many other things that you can do that would be more beneficial to your shooting rather than just shooting from them. So I wouldn't do that. Loudspeakers, great training aid, especially when you're headed to an event that you know is going to be loud, so you can get comfortable with abnormal loudness or noise. But otherwise, I know for a fact that the majority of high-level international shooters will only shoot indoors, and will only, especially if their federation can afford a large indoor building, like the Koreans. The majority of them, when they're practicing, will shoot from an isolated area in the still air and shoot out into the wind. So the target will be outside, they will be standing indoors, and so there is no wind, there is no nothing on them, but they still have to aim off and compensate for the wind. I think that would be best personally, and I believe that that's important because, as you say in your follow-up comment, if you shoot in the wind for too many days or weeks in a row, you get frustrated and your form starts to break down. So why are you training bad form? You can't shoot well in the wind without breaking your form down to some extent. So it is one of those things that once you learn how to deal with it and learn how to deal with those situations, I would never shoot in those conditions ever again, in my personal opinion. And if you were my student, I would never recommend you to shoot in adverse weather conditions unless you had never done it before. So James got a question: has Barebow altered or challenged my mental game? Absolutely, 1,000%. I was trying for forever up until about a week and a half ago to be able to aim in the middle and execute a shot without some sort of psycho trigger, and I couldn't do it. I could fake it, make it look okay, but I would still collapse or creep or drive by, and just wasn't pretty. And frankly, the stress and the anxiety of it was almost not making it fun, but I was enjoying it so much that I just didn't even care, and I was willing to still shoot. But now that I have a psycho trigger, the grip sear, it's way better, 1,000 times better. But as far as how it's altered my mental game, there are a few things that I have to do different, like the string crawling. That's different. The analyzation part of the phase of, okay, I went high or low. Now I've got to decide if it's my crawl instead of my grip pressure, Also, I've noticed that I hike this back shoulder up as I'm string walking, and not really, at least. And so because that's happened, I now have to actually take the step of lowering my shoulder back down. So simple. I should have noticed that my shoulder was high, but I got rid of that habit already. It's a weird thing. So let's see. Try to keep up with as much as we've got coming in. I appreciate that, Brian. He's saying that he enjoyed the practice with my wife. Yeah, we had a great time filming that, and we'll definitely do more of that. It'll be a lot of fun, especially once we go into the field and start shooting field archery some more after indoor states. That'd be great, for sure. Trying to find one I haven't answered yet here. Throw them back up. Go ahead. It's hard to scroll up and see what I haven't seen. Yes, Faralg grip sears as the actual device is banned. But the actual action of making your fingernail click off of the grip, if it's a stock grip and it's used for a grip, It's okay, 100%. They cannot stop an action, but they can stop a device. So because there is no device that I am using for the purpose of a click, there is no rule that can ban me from doing an action. So totally legal to do a fingernail click off the grip edge, as long as the grip edge isn't built up. Although I would argue if my putty that I have built up here just happened to extend to the front area, and that's what I was clicking off, well, that's part of my grip, and I customize grips anyway. So unless they're going to outlaw all custom grips or with multiple pieces on them, then I would say it's probably still legal according to my interpretation of the rules. Excuse me. Elias has a question. Do I think that cross-training with other archery disciplines is useful or counterproductive? It depends. It really depends. I believe that if you're shooting recurve and you have a clicker and all that stuff, even a barebow, training with a compound and a evolution style release or a pressure release, not a hinge, not a trigger, not a thumb trigger, none of that stuff, but the pressure releases of how hard you're pulling, those are great to teach you how to keep pulling and what a release and follow through should feel like, because you're pulling against a hard wall and then all of a sudden the release just cuts free and you just have to follow through in a however you've been pushing pressure or pulling pressure into the bow. So yes, it is useful. It can be counterproductive if it's distracting you from the form and technique that you really should be working on. That would be my suggestion there. So Ryan's got another question. Did I ever run into any established world-class archers that don't put much focus on the mental game? And if so, what do they get by on, talent or abilities? It really depends. You know, it's a difficult question and it's loaded. You know, in my opinion, there are some people that are just freaks, for the lack of better terms. You know, they've got like ice running through their veins, it seems. You know, they just basically, nothing bothers them. And they just have this ability to deal with stress and pressure unlike anybody else, you know? And I believe that part of that is just their ability or their natural tendency to just deal with that stuff. But I can't say that there's one particular person in general, but I believe that, you know, people who can deal with that stuff and not be distracted by the task at hand, they can get away with a lot more. You know, the people that don't see the stress or the pressure or anything like that really, really can help a whole lot. And, you know, I wouldn't say that there's anybody in particular, but I that's kind of what I would say. Trying to find a question here. Okay, Alex got a question. Do I practice any specific mental routine where you focus not on my own ability, but the ability of my equipment to do the job well? That's interesting. That's a very interesting question. Not necessarily. You know, I do put in my time and make sure that my form is good. That is extremely important. It's extremely important to be consistent there and make sure that my my setup is working really, really well. But you know, in my opinion, and I've talked about this, you know, a fair amount, is that, you know, you shoot the bow shoots the arrow. And so the whole point would be to really try to shoot the bow consistently and accurately and repeatedly, so that way the bow then delivers the arrow consistently and repeatedly. You know, that's what I would suggest. So it's a little different as far as that is concerned, only because I've never really. I'm not sure. Maybe expand on your question of what you mean by focusing on the ability of my equipment to do the job well. I mean, I do focus on my equipment, so maybe I'm not quite understanding what you're saying there. Okay, so Frogs is asking the question, how do I cure target panic? Basically, about aiming low and being unable to bring it to the gold, how do I cure it? Before I get too far into it, I would say absolutely a great resource is Joel Turner at Shot IQ. He breaks it down really great. Honestly, you know, his program, I think it's like $200, something like that. it seems like a lot of money, but as a professional in the sport that offers coaching and sells books and things like that, it's worth it. All right. It's a lot of money. But there's a lot of money in equipment, and the benefit that you can gain from it is immeasurable and invaluable. So I would recommend it. I'd recommend high level coaching anyway. And that's coaching as far as I'm concerned. So basically you have to make the decision to not let that happen, to not let the target panic happen. You have to, his explanation is amazing. It goes from open loop programming to closed loop programming. And basically you have to take your focus away from the release phase and shove the focus towards what is going to take you to get to that phase and then past it. And if you can control where you're pushing and going towards, then the release or the recoil of the actual bow breaking and shooting and shocking your system goes away, and it is no longer the primary focus. So you're no longer afraid of it. So you really have to put in your time and really do it. So now if you're a barebow archer, find a sear, make a tab sear, make your grip sear. You don't have to put a washer on it, because if you're shooting world archery, so essentially all you got to do is hook your finger on something on an edge, and you're going to pull like this against the edge as you're pulling. And when that clicks off, you just cut it loose. It's like a clicker. I mean, it's amazing. It's something that really just made shooting barebow 10,000 times more enjoyable for me. And really love that I'm being able to do that. As far as compound, it's a little bit more loaded. He's got a system for that. I hadn't gone through the compound one yet. I deal with target panic there, and I'd like to cure it too. So I will go through that, and probably I'll do some videos talking about it because I really liked his system. And it was the only way that I've seen it explained in the manner that he explained it, because it's an irrational thing. It's something that is just, it's embarrassing to deal with, but it can go away super simple as long as, you have the ability to make the choice and the decision, and you want it to go away. It can go away. You just have to find how to make it happen. So there's many ways of doing that. Finding a psycho trigger for a barebow really, really helps. And that's what a tab sear would be, where your thumb is pushing on the tab and it clicks off the tab face, or the fingernail on the grip clicking off of that. Totally illegal for competition, and is a game changer. So the push is asking, what's my bourbon of choice? I'm not really a bourbon fan. I kind of am. I like the more mellow ones. I don't like the super smoky ones. I don't really have a bourbon of choice necessarily. Tonight I've got Lagavulin. I decided to grab that off the shelf. Not something I have often, but I like Scotch and rye. If I have a non-Scotch, it's definitely a rye. I like the spiciness. Yeah. Let's see here. Yes, Alex. So confidence that if I do execute everything well, the bow will deliver the arrow where I intended. Yes. So you have to focus on the self and then let the bow do what it does. Absolutely. Let's see. What are my thoughts on a newer archer jumping into local tournaments with the expectations to experience and learn to cope with the stress? Absolutely great. I would love to see that and encourage that. I think that really getting your feet wet is a great thing, because especially if you put yourself outside of your comfort zone, you really will notice where your shortcomings are. So I would always recommend that. Anytime you can, dip your toe in the deep end and see what it's like, because it really will show where your faults are. But you have to approach it from a healthy mindset. Don't approach it from the expectation to win. Approach it from the expectation to learn, and be honest with yourself and take detailed notes or notations in your mind, or actually on paper, doesn't matter where. But that's where I would really approach it. What's your favorite bourbon there, Matt? Let's see. We got another question from Ryan. I'm trying to see if there's any other ones that I haven't hit yet. I haven't seen much yet, so or I've seen much, but a lot have turned over. But Ryan's got a question on Korean training methods handling snakes, sleep deprivation, cleaning sewage, staring at deceased bodies in crematoriums, carrying boats up mountains. Crazy but effective. Yeah, I mean it is. Some of the stuff is a little bit unnecessary. So to give people an idea of what's going on there, the high-level Korean archers will be subject to mental training to harden them as an individual. So like dealing with the stress of handling snakes or seeing dead bodies being burned, or being trained like Navy SEALs carrying boats up mountains and stuff like that. It is it's interesting. I don't think it's necessary. I think you could do better elsewhere. It will harden you. And I think that's important, to be mentally strong. So you have to be able to overcome adversity for sure and deal with pressure and stress no matter the situation, and just nail what you need no matter what the situation is. And that can help, but I don't think it's necessary, in all honesty. I kind of roll my eyes at it because it's just like, I mean, it's, shooting archery and competing when it's tough and you're down 5-1, you do need mental fortitude to push through that. But I don't think watching bodies in a crematorium is going to give you more ability than others. It's just one of those things where some of the things that people come up with, they think they have these lovely ideas and they're going to make everybody better. And, it's really impossible to decide whether or not that actually made an impact, because there's 10,000 other facets of what they're doing in order to decide whether or not that is important and influential. So I really don't think it's important. Good hard work and raking the lawn and stuff like that, that'll harden you plenty, especially if you're a kid. But yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's nuts, in my opinion. Let's see here. Heather has a question. What is my shot process? Am I thinking about each step, like grip, anchor, alignment, scope, peep, focus on whatever, pull? So each thing is different there, Heather. It's tough to say, and tough to say what is. I think if you're in a different situation in a development phase than I am, yeah, your thought process is going to be more on the steps, and you're going to look more robotic. But once you get into the advanced level stages, so for example, within my shot cycle, I don't know, maybe there's 10, 11 steps. Okay. So those steps are black and white, but within each step, there are 10 other sub steps. And so those are black and white, and there's a million steps, right? Yeah, you could focus on those black and white things and make it look like a robot. But eventually, as you get really advanced and you start getting comfortable and what you're doing starts to become subconscious, it then becomes just a giant gray scale. And it goes from bright white to black over here, and it slowly fades into, from gray to black. And that is what that is what I would say, is what will happen. But as far as what I actually think about, I just think about the action phase of release and follow through and my finish. That's what I really honestly focus on, is the finish. Pushing in the front, pulling in the back, driving. That's really what my main focus is. So, and let's see. Any tips for a first international tournament in a country you've never been to? China in Josie's case. Yeah, COVID. So for mental tips, prepare yourself for some interesting food. So do your best to smuggle in as much food as you possibly can. Don't open the beef jerky before you fly, no matter how hungry you are the night before. The dogs will sniff it out. Leave it sealed. Same with the peanut butter. Same with the tuna. Bring as much protein and fats as you can that are great for you, because unless you're really into deep fried pork fat, I would avoid it. Being just prepared to see adversity and different things is important. being prepared for the lag, the mental fatigue of the time zone change and the jet lag. Do your best to hydrate your butt off pre and post the flight, even during. You can dehydrate up to 1 liter an hour, especially if you fall asleep with your mouth open at altitude. So I would really just make sure you're slamming in your mental process right now and have a primary focus of what you need to do to make your shot break correctly, and just hammer that in. Really just focus on that. Yeah, I love the Lagavulin 16. The GOAT. I thoroughly enjoy it, just enough peat to, I didn't know I liked that. I had a friend that took me to a whiskey tasting in Vegas, and it was actually really enjoyable, because up until then I had been grossed out by it because I got sick on it when I was younger. But I like it now, so it's good. Let's see here. Trying to find a couple of mental process questions. So this feed will be for mental stuff only. I'm happy to answer that type of stuff in the future. Sometime this week, between tomorrow and the next day, I'll probably doing some other live feeds of different formats. I'm considering shooting Barebow tomorrow live. I think that'd be fun during the day. I don't know what time yet, but that would be great. But yeah, that's my plan. So mental stuff during this one would be, there's no tangents that go off on, or I go off on. So Caribbean Canuck, how do I pick my equipment to eliminate it as a mental game stressor? Well, I'll just give you an example of vanes. So I love testing vanes, my favorite one to test, because it's so simple and it doesn't affect the training day. I'll fletch up many different arrows with different fletchings and then plot them on an arrow plot chart and compare the groups and pick the one that grouped the best. And when I'm done with that process, even though it will take weeks because there's tons and tons of vanes and different distances you can put them in different rotations if you're shooting vanes and pelical and all that stuff. By the time the process is done, I feel really good and confident that no one else has done as much of that as I have, or at least I don't believe they did. So I feel that that's an advantage above my competition. So that does affect my mental game and makes me more confident, and thus reducing my stress. So that's how I like to test and play with equipment. As long as it's not affecting my training day, it really helps. Sean, he says he shoots fast and scores bad. Is that target panic? That's really hard to say and difficult to answer without actually seeing and discussing what you're actually dealing with. A fast shooter is not necessarily somebody who has target panic, but if you're struggling with getting back into anchor and holding for any period of time before you cut it loose, and that ability to do that, then I would say yes, it is most likely some sort of target panic, or at least a part of target panic. Rachel's got a question. How do I get over the fear of keeping score? Keep score all the time. Shoot score every single day. That's what I do. Or did when I was training all the time. I always scored no matter what. I always wrote down the score on the target, and I just was breaking it down in 36 arrow groups or 30 arrow groups if it's indoors, and just always monitoring my scores. And then there was no stress to the actual score. James got a question. How do I feel about competing again and nationals or something? I'm actually shooting states, not nationals. Yes, there's indoor states, and nationals are the same in the US, but essentially you just pay an extra $40 and have your indoor state score count as national score. And I'd rather just shoot states. So I am ready. I have no expectations. And I am not really hoping for any sort of score. I would like to, my main goal is to execute all 60 shots with my grip sear and do it well. That's my main focus of my primary focus at the moment. Thanks, Marco, for the recommendation on Glen Moran. I don't know how to pronounce that. I never know. I'd like to try that one too. Yeah, I like Lagavulin. I also, Lafroig's good from time to time if you want to argue with your taste buds. But I prefer, it's an everyday thing, I like the rye. Let's see, Gary, another question. Would I consider altering my approach to a pressure shot to offset common failures, such as taking too long and the shot locking up? Would I consider being more physical on pressure shots? Okay, so this is an interesting one. I wouldn't necessarily say I would alter my approach, but what I would do to deal with the times of when you lock up or when there is no option to hold long, which in my opinion should be almost every shot, is to really have the process of once you get to that AB, once you get to full draw and you've transferred and you're ready to go, you commit. You fully commit with blind faith that you're gonna execute and it's gonna happen. And you know, it takes tons and tons and tons of shots, doing them correctly to have an actual true blind faith in your ability to finish that shot and to let the shot break free and fluidly. So you have to really put in your time, but then when the stress and the pressure comes in, you've got to be willing to jump and just let it happen. And I discussed this with Matt on the Push podcast of the description of ABC. So set position, transfer, finish the shot, release is somewhere in here. Knowing that as you're running up to this cliff, that there is water and it is deep enough over that cliff, but you're full on sprinting to that edge. And once you get to that edge, you take that last push to jump, to clear the edge, and you can't see the water, you can't see the result until you've already pushed yourself over that edge and you're then falling towards the water. You have to have that ability to know that there is water down there and you're willing to take that leap and to make it happen. It's a difficult and interesting thing to deal with, only because there is a lot of stuff that can happen. There's a lot of distraction. There's timing can go long. And something that I talk about in the shot cycle intensity, the intensity shot cycle, is having a sense of urgency. So as you notice that your time is starting to run out or you're holding for a little too long, start ramping your intensity up as you get closer to that time window expiring and pushing more aggressively towards that finish point. And that can help a bit with the pressure shot. I wouldn't say just go for it, but you got to have that faith that it's going to happen and not allow that doubt to sink in or seep in at all. Ansari's got a question of, how do I do visualization? Okay, so visualization is something, you can just close your eyes and sit there, and you can either picture yourself in third person or first person. You can think about yourself in a white space where there is nothing around you but white. If you've seen The Matrix, you know what I'm talking about, where they're loading the program and Neo's just jumping in the Matrix for the first time, where it's a load program, you're in the white room. That helps a lot when you're focusing on more self-image type visualization. But once you start doing visualization to achieve some sort of level of success, especially at a particular tournament, or at least anticipating stress coming up and dealing with that, is to put yourself in the exact venue that you're going to be at. Look at pictures from years past, see what the colors are, see where the trees are, see what the sky looks like, what the grass looks like or lack thereof, and see everything that is there and imagine what it looks like, what it smells like, what the wind feels like, and put yourself in that and then visualize yourself shooting. So some people can see themselves from third person shooting shots, but I always advocate trying to feel the shots that you're actually making and feeling that it's actually happening. So sometimes looking at yourself in third person is good, but still feeling the shot breaking and feeling the positions that you're in is really good. Visualizing the result of the arrow dropping in the 10 ring, all of those things are really, really important and helpful. So there are many programs or videos, and there's actually some apps out there that take you through visualization, not specific to archery, but visualization in general. And then once you learn that, you can apply it to archery quite easily. Yes, Matt. So the push is saying the evaluation of the grip seer ruling within World Archery is accurate. So they ban the use of the device, but not the action of actually moving the finger. So I'm glad we have drink recommendations flying around on here. That's awesome. So Brian's asking me, do I find music helps me calm down in a higher pressure situation, like singing a song? And he likes to sing a song in his head for 3 to 4 seconds to help him forget the stressful situation he's in and allows him to execute well. So that's an important thing to know. You have to know when things work for you, when some sort of thing that you're doing really works for yourself. You don't have to retract your comment there, Gary. Allows yourself to be distracted in moments that you need to be distracted, but you need to have the ability to refocus when that's important. So that is something that you need to make sure you have the ability to do. So, find your happy place, basically. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of Happy Gilmore. But you gotta like put yourself in the place of where you feel confident and comfortable with where you're at. So, mine, I found myself when I kept my mind busy, especially outdoors, just reading the wind, looking around the whole field and looking at the flags behind me, looking at the flags over there and here. And that act of actually searching for the wind and then being able to recognize what I'm going to do distracted me from the task at hand and allowed me to hone my focus back into what's going on. So I don't think there's anything wrong with singing at all. I think that's definitely good if it works for you. You just have to be able to recognize when you need to and then bring yourself out of it and not keep singing through the action phase. Although some people can do that too. It really depends on how much work they've put in beforehand. So Barebow Princess got a question. How do I mentally cope with disappointment in your personal performance at a competition, specifically if I'm working on something, so that it doesn't negatively impact your next competition? Well, that's an interesting question. You have to have the ultimate end goal in mind. And what is the goal? Is the goal to get better, or is the goal to just do the standard performance that you've been having at that given tournament that's coming up and continuing to struggle and not working through those things? So it's really important to really make sure that you are as honest as possible and decide when what is important. So if a tournament 6 months from now is way more important than the tournament that's happening this weekend, but you still need to or still want to shoot the tournament this weekend, I personally have dealt with this, and, I would have a tournament in a couple weeks that's extremely important, but the tournament that I'm at, I had to go to because of sponsors or rolling ranking or whatever it is. But I'm going to train through that event, and I'm going to shoot 300-400 arrows those days on the practice range, in addition to my competition stuff, for the payoff of shooting better at later tournaments. So as long as you have the mental approach of, okay, I'm going to use this as training, I'm really working on practice or working on form, and I know I'm not quite there, but I know that if I stick through this, then I will get better. You have to have the eyes on the prize. That's actually important, and really have that be the primary focus. Ryan's got another question. What is it like to live and train for the Olympics with your team, but then have to compete against them at the individual level at the Olympics and other competitions? It's an interesting dynamic for sure, because you want to encourage them to do better, because especially if you have a team event, you do better as the team does better. But also when you're competing against them, you want to beat them. Sometimes they are in a better place than you are, and sometimes you're in a better place than they are, or sometimes you got it and or sometimes you both got it and you just both duke it out until the very end. Camaraderie is really important, and respect is really important to those two things, or those two things are important to that. And being able to really just be okay with the performance and leave it all out on the field as much as possible, and still have the same respect and love for that person, because if you do for them, hopefully they do for you. And the camaraderie that can be there to encourage each other to get better if you genuinely are, you can get really, really good, really, really fast. You know, Brady and I really kind of hit it off at the training center, and genuinely we've pushed and pressured and discussed and hoped and shared and everything that we were doing with each other, because if I discovered something that worked for me, I would tell him, because I would expect that he would find something that worked for him and tell me as well. And we did that all the time and we got better. But when we got out on that competition field, we were fighting until the end. And then once that end was over, it's just like, all right, well, you beat me, I beat you, whatever. You know, let's go back to having fun. You really can't, you can't hold stuff like that personally, because it's just a game. But the main goal is to get better. So, you know, I found that acting from a land of plenty is a lot more beneficial to everybody than acting from a land of scarcity. I think that really can help. Oh, sorry, Curtis. Thanks for letting me know that my hands banging on the table was making the noise a little different. Yeah, I tried to. I got a mic, so this is the first time I'm using it. It's not in my computer. I've grabbed a cheap USB microphone off of Amazon to try for this, and I'll do a lot better job at banging on the table. Thanks for pointing that out, and I can not do that as long as I was aware of it. So thanks, I appreciate that. Let's see here. So Caribbean Canucks got a question, or a statement at least. He guesses some aspect of emotional intelligence training helps with mental training approach, such as knowing your emotional triggers, negative and positives. Yeah, I think that's important. You know, that's where I keep like talking about being an honest archer. An honest archer makes a good archer. You know, I think somebody that really is focused on the things that are important and not focused on the things that are not important, even if it's only important to them and their success, then they have a leg up. And being able to recognize what you need to deal with and what you don't need to deal with is really, really important. You know, some people like, let's see, I think it's Martin Ishful, says he doesn't like to look at the other scores that other people are shooting are what determines how well they shoot. I think it's a little funny, but some people just are that way. But some people are also paralyzed by seeing what other people are shooting. I, for one, am not that type of person. I don't get paralyzed by seeing what other people are shooting. It doesn't necessarily push me, but if you ever get to the point of where you go to an international type competition, you better prepare yourself for the announcers talking about what scores people are shooting. They do that all the time at World Cups. They say, oh, ranking round, somebody shot a 60 this end, or, you know, the reigning world champions in this place with this score, this many points behind that. Then you have no option to not pay attention to that. So you got to be comfortable with it. So let's see. I'm trying to find a good mental question here. If I've missed any, please just comment it again. I know there's a few up there that I've missed. Brian's got a question. If I attend ASA events, I have in the past. Actually, I shot the ASA here when it was in Newberry a couple times, and I did go to a couple ASA events with my wife when we were running Archers Association of America, but we didn't shoot them. But I haven't really attended any of those, and I think most of the ASA events in Barebow don't allow string walking and are gap shooting. It's not something I've really done yet, but I'd like to play with it, especially because it's not that far a distance. I think it's like 12 to 25 yards or something like that. It's pretty short. So it would be fun. Yes, it's difficult and there's things to play with, but I think it's not, it would be great fun. Beverly's got a question. Do I have any tips or drills to help with overcoming a bad habit of trying to protect your shot or fear of missing, that when it happens, it actually physically prevents you from making the shot? That is called target panic. I'm not being critical. I have target panic and I deal with it all the time. It's just something that you need to overcome, and you need to focus on what's important. Focusing on the execution, focusing on the action phase of what it takes to actually set the shot off, the process, instead of the potential outcome. You must always focus on the process. And you must also just be comfortable with making shots. And, you know, as far as the fear of missing, the best way to deal with it is to really put in your time and try your best to run mental programs. Especially, I would highly recommend reading into the mental management systems. Lanny and Troy Bassam talked about that stuff, and they have books about that. They have audiobooks and things like that too. And there's essentially a pre-shot routine, the action phase, which is the shot, and then the post-shot routine. And even if you have a bad actual shot, you have two other shots, the pre-shot and the post-shot, to erase what happened that's bad. And so eventually you'll start to imprint on your self-image and subconscious brain good shots and comfort in executing shots with faith. And eventually you'll start to overcome that. I would start there. I would also encourage you guys, everybody, if you're dealing with target panic, check out Joel Turner's system through the push. It's incredible. The way it's explained is the best way I've heard it explained, and I've enjoyed it a lot. Man, these comments are very delayed. I asked some questions a while ago, and they're just coming in. Yeah, Brian, I love Whistle Pig. I actually have had one not that long ago. That was really, really good. And I got like Michters. I don't know. It's great. Okay, so books and coffee. How do I enhance my self-image? And if I found myself doing tournaments better than my best in practice? I mean, that sounds great to me. I don't think that's a problem. Just push through, keep it going. You know, there's really nothing to really worry about there. If it was the opposite, approach tournaments like you approach practice. Everything's a shot. The shot's the same. The bow's the same. The arrow's the same. You're the same. It's just a situation that's different. And all you got to do is manage the stress and the pressure better than the next guy. You don't have to be perfect. You just got to do it better than the next guy, and your scores will be higher than the next guy. I mean, that's the best way that I can possibly suggest approaching the situation. Sorry, Heather texted me. I just want to quickly respond. So the reason I'm having these lives, and I'm going to have a couple of them over the next few days, is because my wife's out of town, and I'm trying to fill my time as wisely as possible. And she just got done with her job over there, where she is. So having a moment to be able to check in and say hello is awesome. But I'm really enjoying everybody here, and really appreciate everybody's supports and questions. It's great. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Okay, Deliver My Sharks got a good question. When at full draw, what are some of the things that I am thinking or feeling that would cause me to let down, either barebow or recurve? Barebow, I don't really let down, other than my fingernail hangs up on the grip, and it's like, and I kind of anticipate the finger breaking too much, the finger's popping off too much. So that's a cause for me to let down. But as far as the actual recurve stuff, timing goes too long, the anchor doesn't feel well, my thoughts drifted somewhere that they're not supposed to be, the wind's ripping, and I'm just going to let it down because it's taken too long and I'm starting to fatigue. Lots of stuff to cause me to let down. Noticeably is just basically like a break in what the thought is. At full draw, I'm like thinking about finishing, and it could be, I don't know, a random thought. Doesn't matter. Just any thought, anything that distracts me. It could be purple ponies. I don't care. Whatever it is, any sort of random thing that would pop into my head, let down, start it over. Something's wrong. Something's going to break, and I'm not going to execute that shot. Start it over, especially if you have the ability and have the time. Just start over. That's why I would let down. Most of the time, because the shot's taken too long, whether it be because I'm anticipating or it's taking too long and I'm starting to anticipate the clicker clicking, and that never goes well. So might as well let it down and have a better chance at shooting a 10 with the next arrow, even though I've fatigued from drawing the bow back already. Let's see. Ryan's got another question. Is it harder to shoot against a teammate friend in the moment on the line, or does it require heightened mental focus? Honestly, I shot my best scores against my friends. It's, I don't know why, you know, it always seems like we shoot the best scores against each other, or the highest scores of the day. I don't know why. You know, I think most of it's comfort, most of it's knowing the person, and being okay with the outcome. I think is probably the biggest reason for the higher scores. You know, because if you win or lose, whatever, it's your buddy. So at least that, you know, you lost to your buddy. So James got a statement. Always fascinated by the way Team USA is chatting and laughing behind the shooting line. Is that intentional to control stress or just good camaraderie? So in the men's program, I would say it's good camaraderie, especially in the recurve division. Compound, they're all just goofing around. I mean, they're all great shooters. They come together as great individual shooters, so they shoot great as a team. Now, recurve, sometimes as far as the women go, I've noticed that they chat and laugh, more of a distraction, because sometimes there is a little bit of mental, they are in a different situation than the men's program. And so I find that what I've seen is the distraction that they bring into the situation helps allow them to continue to shoot well. Whereas the men, we are more or less talking about stuff, or talking about the shooting or whatever. We're chatting about where we're aiming and the task at hand and what we're doing more than anything else. It's not necessarily just random banter and something that's trying to distract us from what we're doing. Brian's got a question. What was my mental approach when I was having issues dealing with my draw shoulder at the OTC? That was a tough time, and I would say that the mental approach is to continue to just push, and not stop. Although that's not good to an injury. You know, you need to not do that. You need to relax and let it calm down. But, you know, because my shoulder things was mostly due to tendinosis, which is just long-term tendinitis. And it's one of those things where you need to rest in order for those things to heal, but you can't get better if you're resting. So you kind of halfway push and halfway recover. A lot of frustration, you know, to be honest. I was pretty much in the training room and recovery room every day for multiple hours. It was more fatiguing than my friends were because of that. But also it was, you know, very upsetting to see that they didn't have to deal with that and could train longer than I did and not have the pain. But it was something I just had to learn to live with and learn to deal with. And towards the end, I learned to deal with training smarter, not harder, and really improving what I was doing as much as possible within my control, and taking those people that would come to the training center with expertise about warm up or proprioception or things like that to a really wholehearted, sickening degree, and applying that with genuine curiosity and hope that not others would do, because they didn't have those same limitations that I did. So I think in the long run, having those limitations, the physical limitations of the amount of arrows I could shoot and the inflammation I deal with for whatever reason, it's never been diagnosed. It's probably not even that big of a deal. Maybe I'm sensitive. I don't know. But in the end, I think it made me a better archer, because I took those people and those experts at face value of true faith of, okay, your system seems to work. It has some scientifically proven studies to back it up. So it's got to work. And I used it, and I genuinely still do to this day for warm up. And my wife says, holy cow, this stuff's amazing. Why don't other shooters do this stuff? I don't know, but I found that it was amazing for my application, and it made me better. So I think in the long run, it made me better. Although in the moment, it was horrible. You know, I'm not going to lie. mentally very draining to be out there shooting as much as you could, but not shooting nearly as much as everybody else, seeing them get better quicker. And I'm in the weight room, sports medicine for 2 hours a day, and they're not, it wasn't fun, but it was something that I believe is, toughens you in the long run for sure. Let's see. Igor's got a question. He said in 2018 in a team bronze medal match, he shot a great shot. It felt great, but it hits in the 6th ring, and the team lost. And for a long time, he feared shooting all the time. And he's good now, but any tips of dealing with the situation? You just got to be okay with the result. You got to do what you can and manage what you can and shoot as well as you possibly can, and just let the arrows fall where they fall and be okay with it. You've got to stand outside of yourself and stand back from yourself and just respect what your performance is, regardless of the outcome. If you've done everything you possibly can and have genuinely put it all out there on the line, to let it lay and just be comfortable with it. And if you shot a 6, you shot a 6. Or you shot a 10, you shot a 10. Be comfortable with it and happy with it, and you'll be okay with it. And it won't paralyze you for a long time to come. It's easy to say, but it's just one of those things you have to have the approach of preparation of, no matter what the outcome is, you're going to lay it out all on the line and leave it all out there on the field and just be okay with it. That's really important. And not many people can do that, but it's in the preparation. If you approach it that way and you're ready to do that beforehand, no matter the outcome and no matter what happens to cause the outcome, it is okay and you can deal with it. But you have to be prepared for no matter what happens, and just say, all right, I'm giving it my all. And even if I shot a good shot and it didn't hit in the middle, okay, well, try to figure out why. What direction? Did it hit left, and was the wind blowing from right to left? Chances are you misread the wind. It could be equipment tune. It could be a vein tore off. It could be all sorts of stuff. So you got to just do your best. I've shot some shots that are interesting. Like one of my most notable ones that strong memory is during the 2016 Olympics, shooting in the team rounds. I think it was semifinals. My sight pin was in the black low, and it's never there. It's always in the yellow, maybe in the 8 ring, but it's never been. Shot broke, but I knew that my pressure, no matter what, was going towards the 10 ring, like I advised with the front half, pushing the pressure towards the 10 ring. The shot broke, and I realized, I was aiming in the black, and I threw my bow arm, and I said, and it went in the middle and shot a 10. It wasn't because I threw my bow arm. And I came off the line genuinely laughing with joy, because it was like the first proof in the pudding that as long as you are focusing on the shot sequence and controlling the shot itself and just letting the shot happen, even if the sight picture is not ideal, your body and your subconscious is crazy, and it can take over and make these ridiculous changes in such a fast time that you can shoot really well. And it worked out, and it went in the middle. So it's one of the things that can happen, and those moments are always excellent. But there are a lot of moments that I should have let down, I didn't let down, and I shot a 6. So I wouldn't advise just pushing through it all the time. That's for sure. Rachel's got a question. How would I mentally overcome or make it through plateaus and form and score improvements? Change it up. That could be change up the time that you're shooting. So how long, maybe how many arrows, or the time of day that you're shooting too. So if you're always shooting in the morning, maybe shoot in the afternoon, or vice versa. As far as other plateaus, you can just try to challenge yourself. Focus a little bit more maybe on the physical training. Do some strength training, some cross training, things like that. That can help. Looking at equipment, just kind of switching your focus. If something's becoming a little stagnant, be a little bit, have a different focus and see if that helps. That always seemed to help me. If I was stagnant, I'd switch my focus slightly, just slightly, and it would be enough to recognize a fault that was somewhere, and then I would no longer be plateaued and I'd get better. Caribbean Canuck question. Was there anything in training while being an RA that I would do differently or not at all today? Yeah, I would have never have shot in the wind all day, every day. That always comes right about 11 a.m. every single day from left to right, and deal with that for the first several years of shooting. Even though I was working on form, there's a primary focus on that, but the wind was destroying my form. And it wasn't until the last few years to where I said, all right, screw this, I'm taking it into my own hands. So the Olympic Training Center, sorry, I banged the microphone, specifically California, was a big pain in the butt because beautiful place, beautiful weather, amazing. But there was a request to build a shooting building for years and years, from like 2000 on. I moved out there in 2006, and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to happen next year. It's going to happen next year. It's going to happen next year. And then they bought like a temporary structure, like literally one of those shacks that you would see at a construction site. And we were going to shoot from inside that to outside, so we were protected from the wind. And it literally sat on a pallet for 3 years and never got assembled, and actually got destroyed by the weather and the conditions, and never got assembled. And then finally the building that was promised got built in like 2015 or 2014 or something like that. And so anyway, in like 2011, I said, F this, I'm taking it into my own hands. And I took tarps that we were using to put over our canopies to keep the sun off of us. And I wrapped the tarps around the side of the canopies, and it blocked the wind. And the training center was complaining that it was ugly. It was an eyesore. And I told them, okay, well then build us a building and I'll get rid of this. And they kept trying to take it down, and I kept putting it back up because the wind was genuinely just destroying my form. And it was horrible because you're fighting the wind and trying to shoot tens. You're not trying to shoot good shots. And it's just, it does nothing for your self-confidence and subconscious and your self-image when you're just fighting the wind all day, every day. So the main thing that I would have changed is no wind. Absolutely. Because I know how to aim off, but it's one thing to know how to aim off, and it's a whole other thing to have to deal with the physical stress of aiming off where you want it to aim off and trying to shoot tens. It's just a brutal fight that's not even worth it. At times it was so frustrating, I just wanted to leave. I would have loved to change that. And I think it would have made a big difference, because when I went back out there in preparation for the 2016 games, after I left, they built the building. And while I was there, I was like, man, I can shoot such high scores indoors. I'm comfortable with shooting these high scores. And then I go outside and it's like, oh yeah, it's just outside. It's not a big deal. And you know, the wind is mild, but it's like I shoot 350s indoors. I should be able to do it outside. And it raised my confidence, and I shot better. And that's definitely what I would have changed. That's a good question. Excellent. Thomas got a question. He's jumping in late, so he's got a question. How do I stay motivated over the years at a high level? It's a tough one. The number one way that I stayed focused was having a training plan. That was the main thing. That was really the only thing, especially when I started shooting on my own and being by myself. You know, especially living here in Florida, it's brutal, it's hot, and you're walking by the pool as you're shooting, and it's like, man, I'd like just go in that pool right now. I don't want to be doing this, but I've got 300 more arrows to go, and it's just like, oh, I got 200 more arrows to go. I really want to. By the time 100 more arrows comes around, you're like, yeah, I'm just going to go jump in the pool. Not good for training, but it's like having the plan of knowing that if this is a heavy day, I have a light day coming up, and the light day is the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what would keep me motivated and pushing through to the very end. That helped a lot. Brian's got a question. Did I care much about lowering resting heart rate? Not really. I did where, you know, I got a Fitbit, whatever. It's just got a heart rate monitor. I noticed, you know, I was dealing with stuff and I was like, man, my heart rate just seems high. I feel this pressure internally. Look at it and be like, my heart rate's normal. And I realized I wasn't breathing very much. It was my respiration rate had slowed down, and I wasn't breathing enough, and I didn't have enough oxygen exchange. So a little tool like this kind of helped bring everything full circle. I started like, oh, focus on breathing more, and then that internal pressure went away, and I dealt with stress better. Let's see, looking for another question. So it seems like the questions are starting to slow down. So if we've got any more, please have an opponent which I have a problem shooting against, like you're hoping to avoid him. It's probably a common thing. You know, you always dread shooting against Brady, or at least I did, because Brady shoots really well. But I always shot well against him too. So you know, it's kind of like up to it was, you know, coin flip at times when I would shoot against him. But you know, it happens, and you know, the way you deal with it is you're just shooting your bow, and that person's shooting their bow, and you just have to shoot your bow better than the next guy, and you can move on. So really just trying to stay focused on the process of what you're doing is best for sure. So Wayne's got a question. What do I suggest when it comes to keeping a log considering daily routines and practice? I just did it on calendar. I did the routine on, you know, pre-planned routine on the calendar, wrote down scores on the calendar, and made tiny little notes of how I felt on the calendar as well. It was all in one place, easy to use. I like that best personally. How do I feel about having two separate coaches? I don't see anything wrong with it necessarily. As long as they're on the same page and they're not giving you conflicting things. Lano, I'm not sure yet on that ruling. Let's see. It's just responding to my wife. Yeah, so we're not sure on the MetaDDX dampers. I'm suspecting the one in the center will be legal because it says damper, and the ones on the end say stabilizer. Because it says stabilizer and it's isolated in rubber, probably will be illegal. So Igor's got a question or a statement or something. He's a 640 to 650 archer in practice and a 630 archer in competition. Not that many competitions to go to. How to deal with it? Honestly, that's something common, super common. You know, I mean, I've shot ridiculous scores in practice and relatively consistently, but in scoring and a competition, it's a little bit less than that. And I think that's just a common thing to deal with. It's nothing to really get down on yourself about, because that's pretty common. The only thing that you can really do to make that better is to make sure that your focus isn't drifting. Make sure that you're really not seeing a change in your main focus and the main driving factor and influencing drive that is being acted upon during your shot cycle routine. Make sure that you're really staying focused on the things that are actually important, and that you actually are treating your arrows the same that you do in competition, that you do in practice. That can really help. And, you know, if you're in practice, you know, in competition, it's difficult to shoot well in competition because, especially during breaking round, you know, especially two ends, you're shooting 6 arrows in 4 minutes. That takes no time at all to shoot 6 arrows, or at least for me it did. So I go and sit down for 2 minutes, and then I have to wait another 4 minutes for them to shoot, saunter down to the target instead of walking quickly like I normally do. And then I have to sit there and score and come back and wait for other people to get their arrows to call. And then you're waiting again for another 4 minutes. And then you finally get to shoot 6 more arrows. And then you do the process all over again. It's hard to shoot well in that type of situation because the pace is just so slow. I think the pace that I normally shot at in practice, shoot higher scores. So, you know, you can try to slow it down some maybe, but it's not fun and it takes too long. So PS got a question about, is visualization important? Yes, it's important. And I think it's helpful, especially if you have goals in mind and you want to attain certain levels of success or whatever, if you want to win competitions. Absolutely, it's important. And it's a great tool and an asset to use. You know, as far as how to do it, you just put yourself in a tournament situation or format, especially if you have a very particular goal about a specific event. Go to a very sickening degree of seeing the grass, smelling the grass, seeing the wind, feeling the sun, and then take it to another level of overcoming difficult situations. It will make you even better and better quicker. J.M. Smith, do I incorporate any kind of mental training while doing everyday activities like brushing teeth, driving, etc. Yeah, absolutely. If you have moments where you have nothing going on, instead of picking this thing up, do some visualization. That can help a lot. If you can make that your default, you'll shoot more arrows in your head, and you'll train more, and you can get better quicker that way, for sure. Ryan, got another question. Do you feel that my mental development through competitive archery specifically helped me in the rest of my life? Did it result in any noticed improvements in my personality that I noticed? Yes and no. It absolutely made me recognize when my thoughts were not realistic, as well as my expectations weren't realistic, because again, the whole honest archer makes a good archer thing. I try to take that into the rest of my life. I still have the lack of patience, and it's difficult because, I'm an instant, not necessarily an instant gratification thing type person, but it's definitely, I struggle with that. I can see the path to an outcome, and I want that outcome right away. I don't want to walk the path. It's difficult, and it's something I've always struggled with. Archery that has humbled me, and it's forced me to just wait for that to happen. So I've noticed that for sure. As far as other assets and other parts of that, yeah, I mean, hard work, dedication, and plan, follow through definitely really helped. It's an interesting thing to try to work through, and then you see results slowly. Also, seeing the small steps, the small successes really helps a lot, and that's something that I've really, especially lately, tried to have more of a focus on, instead of wanting to finish the whole project, being really satisfied with each step of the finish of the project. Even though the main one's not done, being able to work through those little bits to get to that point of the success is what really has made an impact, a lasting impact. So looks like the questions have wound down. I will be posting at some point tomorrow, if I can get my phone to work outside, for doing a live. I'll probably do some Barebow shooting live, because a lot of people had requested some Barebow content, Barebow discussion, things like that. So I'll probably do that in the tomorrow. I don't know when I'll post or when I'll get live. It'll probably be obviously during daylight hours, because I'm shooting outside in my backyard. So it'll probably be noon to 2 Eastern, somewhere in that time frame. We will see. But if there's any other last lingering questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will be cutting this off here soon. How did I develop the habit of getting up and training every day? I feel like as a hobbyist, you found yourself putting it off because it's only a hobby, but at the same time, you want to improve. Got to do it. Just you gotta, if you want any motivation, look at and listen to David Goggins. An insane individual as a human being. He does some very crazy things, like running ridiculous 100 and some odd mile races. And even he will sit there, and he talks about it all the time. He gets out of bed and stares at his running shoes for 35 minutes before he puts those things on and starts running, because he doesn't want to do it. But if you really want to get better, you got to push yourself to do it. That's somebody I would listen to and work and talk, read about there, James. David Goggins. Well, anyway, looks like I'm going to wind it down. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I genuinely appreciate everybody. Thanks for tuning into this and throwing up great questions. I can't thank everybody enough. This channel is growing really fast. And, anytime anybody has shared this video and shared any of my content, commented on the comment, clicked on the affiliate links, bought the shirts, books, anything like that, it's made massive differences. It's allowed me to do a lot more of this, and it will allow me to do much, much more in the future. Lots to come on this channel, and a lot of exciting things to come. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I'm sorry I keep banging the table with this mic on it. So anyway, take care. Have a good one. And if you're just tuning in towards the end, once I hit the end here, it will go post to my Facebook or my YouTube page. So you'll be able to watch that forever for the future. And it should be good to go probably within a few minutes. So anyway, thanks again, everybody. Take care. Have a good night and stay safe.